Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. Caden Blackwood was able to smuggle contraband past 3 different military checkpoints, negotiate with pirates for whom murder was entertainment, and one day convince them not to throw him into the airlock at gunpoint, relying solely on his charm and a dubious recipe for synthetic nectar. None of this had prepared him for the moment he walked through the gates of Valerion's capital, holding the hand of a 7-year-old girl who might or might not be of royal blood. "Are you sure this is the right place? What is it?" he asked for the 3rd time, looking at the crystal spires that seemed to grow out of living light rather than ordinary materials. The entire city buzzed with bioluminescent energy, creating patterns of blue and silver that shimmered like the northern lights on every surface. Lyra tightened her grip on his hand, her own glowing skin glowing with excitement. "City of Light," she said in a low voice that barely rose above a whisper during their 3-week journey home. The child Caden had found in the refugee camp had brought them to the capital, and now they were accompanied by fighters whose weapons could easily destroy a small cargo ship without disrupting the formation. The fact that they were being led to the capital rather than blown up in space suggested that someone important wanted to see them. It could be good news or bad news, depending on who the person was. "Sir," the escort commander's voice crackled through the ship's communication system, "you will dock at Terminal 7 and be checked immediately. Any deviation from the prescribed approach vectors will be considered a hostile act." "Got it," Caden replied, although he was beginning to doubt whether it was wise to follow the instructions of the child he found in the refugee camp. The head of security, Atharetron, a man with a glowing skin pattern indicating a high military rank and low tolerance for nonsense, conducted a thorough inspection of Caden's cargo ship. The team of technicians used advanced equipment capable of detecting individual molecules. Caden and Lyra were subjected to biological scans, psychological evaluations, and what appeared to be genetic analysis. The purpose of their visit was to question the head of security, an Atharetron man with a high military rank, about their humanitarian mission, which was true, even if it seemed absurd in the context of entering one of the most protected star systems in the galaxy. They were returning a lost child to their family. The security chief looked at Lyra, who was inspecting the crystal architecture with a knowledge that implied deep knowledge. "What's your name, child?" he asked. Caden was stunned by what Lyra said. She claimed to be Princess Lyra of Valerion, the daughter of Queen Celestine. She wanted to see her mother. The head of the security service confirmed that Lyra died as a result of a terrorist attack on the royal transport 7 years ago. "There were no survivors," he added. Lyra simply stated, "I'm not dead." Her skin glowed with what Caden recognized as anger. "I got lost, but I found my way home," she continued. Caden was amazed by the security protocols. Instead of being detained, Lyra was treated with respect and kindness. They were escorted around the city by a full escort. Valerians lined up along their route, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disbelief and hope. The news of their arrival spread like wildfire through the capital, and Caden found himself in the midst of a crowd holding their collective breath. "This is really happening," he muttered as he watched the palace guards in ceremonial armor form defensive formations around their transport. "I'm going to return the lost princess to an alien queen who could probably destroy entire star systems." "Mom doesn't destroy people," Lyra said in the tone of a child discussing obvious facts. "She puts them in correctional cells. Much more efficient." "That was reassuring," Caden replied, even though he was beginning to realize that his simple act of kindness had consequences far beyond just bringing back a lost child. The child was taken to her family in a palace that defied all architectural conventions. The walls flowed like frozen waterfalls, and the corridors branched and merged naturally. The entire structure seemed to be pulsing with the same bioluminescent energy that powered the city. They were escorted through a series of increasingly complex checkpoints, each requiring higher security clearance and more complex identification procedures. As they approached what turned out to be the last security barrier, one of the guards informed them that Her Majesty had been informed of their arrival and would receive them immediately in the throne room. Caden asked, suddenly realizing that he was still wearing the travel-stained clothes he'd been wearing for 3 weeks. "Should I change my clothes first?" The guard advised him to familiarize himself with the protocol and learn how to address galactic royalty without causing intergalactic incidents. Her skin was a deep, rich blue, and her hair was a cascade of silver that fell to her waist. Her eyes were a piercing, unearthly shade of purple, and they seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. She was wearing a pure white dress, and her crown was a delicate, intricate pattern that seemed to be made of light itself. As Caden approached, he felt the weight of her gaze on him and realized that he was about to meet the most powerful being in the Valerian Empire. Her radiant complexion displayed a silver-blue pattern indicating royal lineage, and her demeanor suggested someone who was used to unquestioning power. Her face was a fascinating image, as only the most dangerous things can be. Sharp, refined, and absolutely unwavering. When Queen Celestine rose from her seat, she noticed that Lyra was looking at her with disbelief, which was quickly turning into something deeper. The Queen's voice reverberated through the room with unprecedented clarity, and the young girl, who had remained speechless throughout their journey through space, suddenly let go of Caden's hand and ran towards the throne with the unwavering determination of a child returning home. "Mama," Lyra called, her voice echoing through the hall as Queen Celestine descended from her throne to embrace her daughter with arms trembling from the burden of many years of grief. The court around them fell silent, watching as their queen held her long-lost daughter and shed tears that twinkled like stars. "She's mine," Celestina said, her voice choked with emotions Caden hadn't heard in the audience in decades. "She really is my mother." When they hugged each other in the heart of an alien empire, Caden realized that his life as a smuggler had just become more complicated. The silence was broken by the fainting of several courtiers, which he found comforting. Even advanced alien civilizations have people who react to shocking news with fainting spells. The Queen's appearance caused a wave of reaction among the nobles, whose skin patterns changed into what he recognized as excited whispers. The elderly courtier approached him, assuming a high rank. "Perhaps we should check," he thought, "and genetic confirmation might be desirable." The Queen's luminosity increased, causing several people to faint. "The people are retreating, Lord Valerian." There was a quiet authority in her voice that could probably stop asteroids in their tracks with willpower alone. "Are you implying that I can't recognize my own daughter?" "Of course not, Your Majesty," Lord Valerian replied quickly, his skin patterns revealing what Caden interpreted as diplomatic stress. "I just thought protocol might require it." "Protocol," the Queen said, settling Lyra more comfortably in her arms and staring at Caden with a gaze that could cut through a crystal. They weren't preparing for the return of a child who was supposed to be dead, and they weren't expecting the extraordinary man who brought her home. After a moment, Caden realized that the Queen was looking at him. "Oh," he said, suddenly realizing that several hundred pairs of alien eyes were focused on him with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and perhaps even gratitude. "Your Majesty, I'm just Caden. Caden Blackwood. I found her in a refugee camp." As Caden spoke, her radiance turned into patterns that he couldn't understand, but they seemed warmer than her previous manifestation. "You found my daughter in a refugee camp and brought her across a vast expanse to reunite me with her. She asked me to take her to the City of Light," Caden said, feeling increasingly out of place in the crystalline grandeur of the throne room. "I had no idea what she was. I had no idea she was your daughter. She just seemed like a lost child in need of help." "The lost child?" Queen Celestine asked softly, looking at Lyra, who was intently studying the throne room, as if recalling details from a past life. Indeed, I suppose that's exactly what she was. Mom, Lyra said, her voice clear in the perfect acoustics of the room. Are you still upset about the incident in the garden? The Queen's glow flashed, and Caden. I learned to be surprised. The incident in the garden? When I was trying to make the crystals sing by hitting them with my ceremonial staff. Lyra explained the situation matter of factly. You said that I should stay on Earth until I learned to properly respect the palace property. Lyra, said Queen Celestine, her voice filled with a variety of emotions, from joy to sorrow. You were only 4 years old. That was 7 years ago. Oh, Lyra said, seriously considering this information. Am I still on Earth? The sound that came from Queen Celestine could have been laughter or sobbing. Maybe both. No, my dear. You are definitely not on Earth anymore. Okay, Lyra said, then looked around the throne room with renewed interest. I want to check if my crystal collection is still there. Of course, the Queen replied, although Caden noticed that her hands were shaking slightly as she held her daughter. But first we need to talk to the person who... Queen Celestine turned her gaze back to Caden, her intensity making him wish he had chosen other clothes. You gave me back something that I thought was irretrievably lost, she said. How can I express my gratitude? Caden replied, no need to thank. I just did what anyone would do. The Queen shook her head. No, there is a difference between what anyone would do and what a virtuous person does. Before Caden could respond, Lord Valerian intervened, pointing out the pressing political issues. Your Majesty, he said, if I may, the return of the princess has significant implications for the law of succession and other matters. Those consequences can wait until tomorrow, the Queen replied, her attention still focused on Caden. Caden, the Queen said, her voice carrying an invitation that sounded more like a royal command. I hope you'll join us for dinner. I'm sure Lyra has stories to share. And I have to admit, I'm curious to know the circumstances leading up to this wonderful reunion. I don't have the right clothes for lunch with the royal family, Caden replied, feeling a little awkward. The Queen, dressed in her shabby smuggler's clothes, simply stated, we'll take care of it. I suspect that anyone who has the guts to return a lost princess to their mother shouldn't worry about impressing others with their clothes. As the royal entourage headed for what Caden assumed were private chambers, he found himself walking next to the most powerful woman in Valerian space, engaged in a conversation that seemed unreal. Where did you find her? The Queen asked, her voice so low that only he could hear it. Caden replied that she was living with a group of military orphans in a refugee camp on Kalan 7, surviving on food rations and everything they could muster. He said she had been there for at least 2 years, possibly longer. The Queen repeated the number, her luminosity dimmed by what looked like pain. What was she doing before that? She asked. Caden replied that he didn't know. I would like to share with you some details about a woman named Lyra. She has a strong will to survive, and she has been taking care of herself since the age of 7. The Queen, her mother, mentioned that Lyra has this innate instinct, and she would be deeply saddened if she found out about what happened to her daughter in the refugee camp. Caden, who knows Lyra well, described her as extraordinary. She's smart, brave, and incredibly persistent. She never lost faith in her ability to find her way home. The Queen also pronounced the word home with a gentle tone, indicating her deep concern for her family and their well-being. I gave up on the idea that she would ever come home. However, Caden, surprising himself with his courage, comforting the royal person, did it. Now you have a chance to make up for lost time. Queen Celestine looked at Caden with gratitude and respect. Caden Blackwood, you are either very wise or very naive. Maybe both, she said. What now, Your Majesty? I brought her home, and she's safe with you. Should I leave you to celebrate the family reunion? No, Caden, the Queen replied, her tone changing to almost amused. You have just returned the royal heiress to the Valerian Empire. You will not leave until we find out how this miracle happened, and until we reward you for your service." "I don't want a reward," Caden replied. The queen smiled and said, "Then we will find a way to honor you that is more appropriate." Seeing her in her mother's company was a reward in itself. The queen spoke with the manner of someone who had never experienced the gratitude of the royal family. This time, her radiance was unmistakably filled with fun. "You saved my daughter's life and brought her home," she said. "The debt I owe you cannot be cancelled simply because you are too modest to claim it." As they neared the private royal chambers, Caden realized that his simple act of kindness towards a lost child had somehow drawn him into the complexities of galactic politics, which he had only just begun to understand. But when he watched Lyra excitedly explore her childhood home and saw how joy transformed the stern features of Queen Celestine, he decided that some difficulties were worth accepting. After all, how often does a smuggler like him get the chance to dine with the royal family and reunite a family torn apart by tragedy? He mused as the servants began to prepare dinner. Caden asked. The queen nodded, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Oh yes, the pirates. They were a constant threat, but we managed to keep them at bay. It was a challenge, but we were well prepared." "And the children?" asked Caden, his curiosity piqued. The queen smiled, her eyes softened. "The children were a joy. They were resilient and full of life, despite the difficulties they faced. They have been a constant source of inspiration for all of us." Caden nodded, his heart filled with admiration for the queen and her people. "You seem to have a wonderful community," he said, his voice full of respect. The queen smiled, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Indeed, and I am grateful for the opportunity to share our story with you." Caden smiled back, his heart full of gratitude for the opportunity to learn about the queen and her people. "I am honored to be here, Your Majesty," he said, his voice full of sincerity. The queen nodded, her eyes glowing with warmth. "And I'm honored to see you here, Caden. I hope you will stay as long as you wish." Caden smiled, his heart full of gratitude for the queen's kindness. "I would be happy to stay as long as you receive me, Your Majesty," he said, his voice full of sincerity. Queen Celestine asked, her eyes full of concern. "Those who took people away, Lyra?" Lyra replied matter-of-factly. "Mostly slavers. Sometimes it was just evil people who wanted to harm refugees for fun. I was good at hiding," she continued. "So I helped others hide too." Caden watched as Queen Celestine's expression changed from maternal concern to something more sinister. The bioluminescent panels throughout the room reacted to her emotions, their warm glow giving way to cooler blues and silver hues that he came to associate with royal displeasure. "Slavers," the queen said, her voice filled with a quiet fury that could make entire star systems rethink their foreign policies. To ease the tension, Caden interjected. "It happens. Border conflicts create displaced populations, and vulnerable people become easy targets for exploitation. The camp administrators are doing their best." The queen put down her cutlery with the precision of a man displaying extreme composure. "That's going to change," she said. "Mom," Lyra, seemingly not at all concerned about the political consequences of her statement, asked. "Caden assured me that we would be treated to real sweets as soon as we reach the City of Light." "Of course, my dear," the queen replied, her glow intensifying as she focused on her daughter. "What kind of sweets do you want?" "The ones that taste like starlight," Lyra replied seriously. "I remember them from childhood." The queen's voice was gentle with nostalgia, as she recalled the sweet treats made from crystallized nectar. "These were your favorites when you were 4, she said, "and I still love them." The casual mention of Lyra's age caused a momentary pause, as both adults pondered the consequences. Lyra was 4 when she disappeared, and now she's 11. 7 years have passed in circumstances that would be unimaginable to most adults. Lyra Caden asked cautiously. "Can you remember anything about the day you were separated from your family?" The young girl's expression faded, and she looked at her mother with eyes that seemed too mature for her age. "There was an explosion, fire, and people screaming," she replied softly. "Someone grabbed me and put me in a capsule, telling me to be silent and not move." The queen asked, her maternal instinct warring with her desire for information. "The guard," Lyra replied. "He had silver hair and eyes, the guard. The marks that indicated that she was supposed to protect me. She warned me that bad people were coming, and I had to hide until the good people found me." "What happened to the guard?" asked Caden. Lyra replied that she had not seen her again. The queen's radiance turned into patterns that Caden couldn't decipher, but they seemed ominous. The escape pod must have failed, transporting her to the outer region, where she spent 7 years learning to survive on her own. "Not quite alone," Lyra corrected. "Other children taught me, and sometimes adults shared food. And Caden, who brought me home." "Indeed," the queen said, looking at Caden with gratitude and something else. "Caden, who really brought you home. Which reminds me, we have to discuss exactly how people." The smuggler ended up in a refugee camp on the outskirts. Caden felt his face turn red as he explained that he was transporting medical supplies in an unofficial capacity. Official shipments were often intercepted or delayed due to bureaucratic red tape. So some humanitarian organizations began hiring independent contractors to ensure timely delivery. "The smugglers were hired," the queen explained, without a trace of disapproval in her voice. "Smugglers with a moral compass," Caden corrected. "We believe that saving lives is more important than strictly following the rules of transportation." "It's a laudable philosophy," the queen said, her radiance indicating genuine approval. Caden, however, acknowledged that this approach raises intriguing questions about why civilian contractors are more effective in providing humanitarian assistance than official government programs. He added that this is because we don't need to submit reports explaining why helping people is more important. However, he immediately worried that he might offend the Galactic Empire's government systems. But Queen Celestine smiled, her expression changing her stern features into something warm and accessible. "Caden Blackwood," she said, "you have a refreshing perspective on bureaucratic inefficiencies." The queen's manner changed back to her regal persona, so quickly that Caden wondered if he had imagined the warmth he had felt before. "What are the security issues?" Intelligence reports indicated that some noble families were reconsidering their political positions in light of the princess' return. "The guard," he said carefully. "Lord Commander Vex recommended enhanced security measures and immediate discussion of potential succession scenarios." "How diplomatic and how predictable?" asked Caden, although he began to suspect that Lyra's return home had caused more than just family reunions. "It means," the queen replied with flowing grace, "that some people made plans based on assumptions about me." "I'll have to go through the royal guards," Caden said. "Then you will be under the protection of the royal family during the journey," she said with a smile that was meant to be reassuring but looked slightly intimidating. "Caden, you saved my daughter's life. I won't let anyone hurt you." Together, when the guards began to apply what appeared to be emergency security measures, Caden realized that his simple mission had somehow turned into a political thriller with real consequences. But watching Lyra finish dinner despite the chaos, he realized that some of the risks were worth it. In the end, he brought the lost princess home to her mother. And if that led to political complications and accidental assassinations, well, it would at least provide interesting stories later, provided he lived long enough to tell them. The assassination attempt took place at dawn, which Caden found strangely thoughtful, as he had not expected it until the end of the day. At least the conspirators could let them finish their meal and get a good night's sleep before trying to attack them. Caden woke up to the sound of gunfire in the corridors outside his chambers, followed by the distinctive hum of protective shields activating throughout the palace. "This is Captain Zara, your personal guard." A voice came through the door's communication system. "Please stay in your quarters while we deal with the security situation." "How serious is the security situation?" asked Caden, putting on the clothes provided by the palace servants, which were much better than anything he had ever owned, although he suspected they would soon show signs of explosions. "This is a serious situation involving explosives, insurgents, and individuals who don't seem to have thought through their plan carefully," Captain Zara replied. "Her Majesty has asked me to ensure the safety of Princess Lyra while she deals with the situation." Instantly, Princess Lyra materialized in my chambers. Caden was taken aback, then looked around the room to see a young girl sitting calmly on his bed, fully clothed and holding the firearms of the palace guards with amazing agility. "Hi, Caden," Lyra greeted cheerfully. "Mom thought I'd be safer with you than in my own room." And she was right. Someone just tried to break into my room with what she called crude but effective explosives, and they gave me a weapon. Caden stared at the energy pistol in Lyra's hands, a weapon held by an 11-year-old girl. "I took it from the guard who was supposed to kidnap me," Lyra explained matter-of-factly. He seemed surprised that a refugee child had learned to fight back. But I wasn't surprised that the palace conspirators were terrible at dealing with real violence. Caden glanced at the unconscious guard lying in the corner of the room, whom he had somehow missed in his initial assessment of the situation. "Is he dead?" asked Lyra, startled. "I'm not allowed to take a person's life without my mother's approval." Palace rules, Caden repeated, reflecting on the nature of royal childhood, which includes protocols on when murder is acceptable and when not. These rules come from Queen Celestine, who enters the room with the grace of someone who has just dealt with violent rebels. She enters the room wearing what appears to be combat gear that still manages to look elegant. "Your Majesty," Caden says, noting that the Queen's royal robes have been replaced with armor. "I believe the security situation has been resolved," Caden adds. "Completely," the Queen replies, her beaming face reflecting the satisfaction of a man who has just resolved a difficult situation. The Queen reminded her opponents that challenging the authority of the crown was a long-standing mistake. She explained that planning a coup was much easier than carrying it out, especially when the target of the assassination had been waiting for him for years. She noticed, political intrigues rarely develop overnight. The Queen explained that political intrigues take time to develop, and she turned her attention to Lyra, who seemed unperturbed by the fact that she had neutralized an armed kidnapper. The return of Lyra simply forced the conspirators to accelerate their plans. They were now either dead, exiled, or imprisoned, depending on their level of involvement in the conspiracy and their willingness to cooperate with the investigation. The Queen spoke in the casual tone of someone discussing dinner plans rather than mass political purges when she explained that the Valerian Empire does not tolerate threats to the royal family. "He organized the attack that was supposed to kill me," Lyra corrected. "The kidnapping was a terrible setback. The escape pod should have been destroyed along with everyone else on the ship, but your guardian saved you," the Queen said, her voice gentle with sadness and gratitude. "Captain Valia gave her life to ensure your safety, even though none of you were safe in the end. I want to honor her memory," Lyra said softly. "To thank her for the 7 years of my life, even if it wasn't the life anyone had planned." "We'll arrange it," the Queen promised, turning to Caden with a look that combined royal authority and personal gratitude. "Which brings us to the question of your future, Caden Blackwood. You helped uncover a conspiracy that has threatened the stability of the Valerian Empire for 7 years. You have safely returned the royal heir to her throne and proved that sometimes the most important missions are carried out by those who go against the plan." "I'm not a diplomat," Caden said. "I just brought a lost child home." He was beginning to realize that his concept of simplicity and the concept of the Queen were very different. "You brought my daughter home, and in doing so you took on a debt that cannot be repaid with gratitude alone," Queen Celestine said. "Your Majesty, I do not seek to be a diplomat," the Queen interrupted, her tone suggesting that she was about to reveal something that would change his life, whether he wanted it or not. "I am offering you the position of Special Advisor on Humanitarian Issues. Your task will be to identify and resolve situations that lead to refugees, such as the one in which you discovered Lyra. I want you to be the one who can prevent other children from losing 7 years of their lives alone due to political failures," the Queen said. "You have to understand that helping people is more important than following protocols." Caden glanced at Lyra, who was listening to the conversation with the intensity of someone whose life had been deeply affected by political decisions. What exactly would that entail? The Queen said that this would entail the implementation of refugee protection protocols throughout the Valerian space. This will also include working with aid organizations, both official and unofficial, to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches those in need without any interference from the bureaucracy, and maybe facing resistance from people who benefit from exploiting refugees, Caden added. The Queen agreed, saying that it was almost certain. However, she added that Caden will have the protection and resources of the royal family, which independent smugglers usually do not have. And Lyra added, "You could stay here and have dinner with us sometimes. I like having you around, Caden. You make my mom smile." Caden looked at Queen Celestine, noticing that her light actually displayed patterns that seemed warmer when she looked at it. "You make me smile. You have a remarkable ability to overcome the complexities of politics and focus on what is really important," the Queen remarked, her light brightening in a way that was not driven by royalty, but rather by personal affection. "It's both refreshing and exciting," Caden repeated, feeling as if the world around him was changing. "Caden," the Queen said, approaching him with a graceful movement that made him wonder if the royal genes included improved coordination. "In the last 24 hours, you have reunited me with my daughter and helped expose the conspiracy. This poses a threat to the Empire and demonstrates your willingness to risk your life to protect those you love. If you think that I didn't recognize your intelligence, bravery, and remarkable kindness, then you were inconsiderate. Mom appreciates you," Lyra kindly translated. She was asking the servants about human courtship customs. "Lyra," the Queen said, her glow shimmering with what Caden recognized as royal embarrassment. Lyra asked innocently. "It's true," Captain Zara said. "Yesterday, you spent an hour asking about human gift-giving customs and whether people consider sharing meals to be romantic gestures." Caden chuckled as he realized that the most powerful woman in the universe was trying to figure out how to take care of a human smuggler. "To be clear," he said, "eating together can indeed be romantic gestures, especially when they involve a crystallized nectar cake and discussions of political reform. I am pleased to inform you that I have accepted both the position and your invitation to dinner." The Queen, her radiance lighting up the room, spoke, her words tinged with a slight tinge of timidity. "So, will you accept the position and consider the possibility of future meals together?" Caden looked around the crystal chamber where he had spent the night, the palace that had become his temporary home, the young girl who had trusted him to guide her safely across the galaxy, and the wonderful woman who ruled an empire and wanted to take care of a former smuggler. "Your Majesty," he said, surprising himself with his confidence, "I accept both the position and your dinner invitations." "Great," Queen Celestine replied, her radiance brightened by something that could only be described as joy. "You should probably start calling me Celestine in private, although I'd be happy if you called me by my first name in public. Your Highness can be a bit clumsy when it comes to romantic interactions." "Celestine," Caden said, trying the name and finding it appropriate in his language. "I like it," she replied, coming closer. Caden could see intricate patterns of light dancing on her skin when she was happy. He watched Lyra as she taught a group of refugees how to grow crystal flowers in the palace gardens. He had a hunch that they would have plenty of opportunities to apply his skills at the newly established Refugee Protection Agency. 6 months later, he was standing at headquarters, reviewing reports from aid stations across Valerian space. The job was demanding and often dangerous, but it was infinitely more rewarding than his days as an independent smuggler. Through the window of his office, Caden watched Lyra, who taught children how to care for the crystal flowers she cherished as a child. Her smile still made his heart skip a beat. "How are the new procedures going? What is it?" he asked when she entered his office. He said, "The results are better than expected," pointing to reports that showed significant improvements in refugee safety and resource allocation. However, we are still facing bureaucratic resistance from some outside territories. This resistance will disappear as soon as they realize that refugee protection is an official imperial policy, Celestine said, sitting down in the chair opposite him. Caden asked about the offer, whether it was professional or personal. Her glow suggested the answer, but she said, both. The Council of Lords approved the establishment of a permanent ministry for humanitarian affairs, and they also approved my recommendation for the post of head of this ministry. The recommendation comes with increased responsibilities, and there will probably be more people trying to harm me, Caden said. Celestine agreed, but it also entails a ministerial residence, a permanent position at the imperial court, and official recognition of your status as a key advisor to the crown. And a personal suggestion. Celestine's light changed into patterns that seemed almost nervous. She suggested, "Perhaps you would consider making these arrangements permanent." In every way, Caden felt his heart skip a beat as he considered the consequences. "Celestina, are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to be my partner in all important ways," she said, her light growing brighter with hope and vulnerability. "Professional, personal, and political. I'm asking you to help me build an empire that protects people like Lyra instead of letting them down. And become Lyra's father," Caden replied, fully realizing what she was suggesting. "She already considers you family," Celestina added softly. "She told me yesterday that she hoped you would agree." "Indeed, it is. But I assure you, it's worth it. The ceremony will be a celebration of love and unity, and it will be a day that will be remembered for a lifetime." Caden nodded, his eyes shining with anticipation. "I can't wait," he said. "I'm so happy to be a part of it." Celestine squeezed his hand, her smile widening. "I'm so glad you feel that way," she said. "I'm so glad you feel that way. It promised joy for a lifetime. We need to combine elements of both cultures, meet the standards of an imperial wedding, and make sure that the ceremony includes delicate crystal cakes for the flower girl." "It sounds like a dream," Caden said, pulling her closer to admire the intricate patterns of love and bliss on her face. After all, the most exciting adventures often begin with seemingly impossible circumstances. "Indeed," Celestine agreed as the palace bells began to ring, announcing their engagement to the Empire. And it started with a lost child, a simple act of compassion, and a smuggler who proved that sometimes the most significant journeys lead to family reunification.